Now, it's anyone's guess what the future holds. The coronavirus pandemic caught the world by surprise. Today, hand sanitizer and face masks are the order of the day. Are we likely to see civil or war or civil unrest over vaccines or vaccine mandates? Futurologist and scenario planner Clem Sunter joins us now to discuss this further. One of the questions that many people are asking, Clem, and I never thought this would be a thing given that we've got so many variants that are coming along, are we going to see a world without this pandemic anytime soon?
Well, as I said in the News 24 article, it would appear that Omicron is the tipping point, and it is a milder virus, but more infectious. So we can now play a herd immunity scenario, and hopefully we could be not completely free, but we could be much freer to go about our daily lives in a few months' time. That is, and I point this out as a futurist, if another variant doesn't come up as surprisingly as Omicron did and change the whole game. You've still got to bear that in mind.
Right. And if another variant doesn't come along and shake things up as we've seen over the last 2 years, do you think rather that we'd be better prepared for another pandemic should it come along? And that's just given on the way that the entire world dealt with this particular one, which I mentioned in my intro, came as a big surprise.
Yeah, and hopefully governments around the world will be that much better prepared. And we are going to change our way of living. I think you're going to see a hybrid of working from home with going to the office. I think you're going to see more digital conferences, which have become very popular during the pandemic. And I think that people may well move out of the center of cities and live in, more rural areas because they've experienced the risk of living within huge numbers of people. So we're already adjusting our lives to this pandemic, and I'm not sure any of these elements are going to go away anytime soon.
No, absolutely. And of course, we're going to have to adjust to living in a world that's unpredictable and uncertain. If anything that this pandemic has taught us is we can't really prepare for anything, can we?
No, and that's why I raised that other flag, the red flag, because as we speak, Russia and America and NATO are talking about the Ukraine and the build-up of Russian troops on the border of Ukraine. And yeah, I mean, there are two scenarios arising from this, that diplomacy can win, and we will get some kind of settlement. But on the other hand, Russia is viewing the possible membership of NATO by Ukraine rather like the Americans didn't like Russian missiles in Cuba in 1962. And that very nearly led to another world war. And so as a scenario planner, you've still got to play the downside scenario that these talks won't lead to anything, and then you could have a military conflict.
No, absolutely. And while you mention that scenario and the diplomacy that probably would need to take hold here, you do also mention a green flag. Talk us through that.
Yeah, it's the fact that with 8 billion people in the world now, we are putting pressure on the environment, which we've never done in previous century. And it's not just in terms of global warming and changing our atmosphere. It's displacing a lot of the species that have existed for millions of years on Earth. And we have an incredible diversity on our planet, and we are beginning to harm that as well. So the whole point of mentioning this flag is that it is for real, and it means that we have to go back to really scratch in terms of what we view as worthwhile in our lives, because one of the things we're going to have to do is reduce our carbon footprint, and nations are going to have to do that. And that might at times conflict with economic growth and rising material prosperity and all the things that we've held as sacred up till now. We're going to have to find a balance between sustainability and doing better and making people wealthier at the same time.
No, absolutely, Clem, and that goes quite nicely with the pandemic flag that you also speak about, recognizing the destruction that it caused and how we just go back to basics and try to remedy the mess that's been created throughout the world.
Yeah, I mean, the terrible thing is that the markets, all the financial markets, have done so well during this pandemic, and particularly in the last year. So the wealthy 10% of the world are actually richer than they were before the pandemic. But for many middle class and poor people, it's been shocking. Their businesses have been wrecked. They themselves have been struggling in terms of their livelihoods and their own wages, and people have been laid off. So it's widened the inequality that societies have in the world. And we know all about that here in South Africa. And so one of the huge objectives now of economic recovery must be that it's fair and that it really tries to encourage entrepreneurship at every level. And in South Africa, it means in the rural areas, in the townships, in the cities. We've got to go flat out now on creating a people's economy where everybody can participate.
Absolutely. Many thanks for those insights, Clem Sunter, who's a futurologist and a scenario planner, joining us this afternoon for that discussion. Life beyond COVID, unless we're hit by other variants.